Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Week 2 Fantasy Football Corner with your host, Yoshi De La Cruz. Now, as you can see, I'm not wearing my traditional clothes, but I have decided to celebrate the Jewish high holidays by going to American Apparel and finding myself a little makeshift yarmulke. Also, to celebrate the high holidays, I smoked a bunch of joints before the show. So bear with me on this week's advice. Oh god, I'm freaking out right now. Okay, let's just get to the waiver wire.
I spit it through the wire, man.
I'd like to start the waiver wire discussion talking about a few very interesting tight ends. Now, apparently in Baltimore, Joe Flacco is wacko for his tight end, Dennis Pitta. Now, he's the #1 receiving target and receiving leader on that team. I do think Wacko will start to get the ball into the hands of his wide receivers, but I do think Dennis Pitta is a viable start any week going forth right now. As well, New York Giants wide receiver Martellus Bennett is having a really, really nice start to the season. Now, of course, there's great wide receivers in New York, but that high-powered offense is going to march down to the end zone, and he's a big target threat down there. Seriously, have you seen how big Martellus Bennett is? I mean, I haven't seen a beast that large since I went to my own prom. Now, if Ahmad Bradshaw's neck causes him to miss time, then Antonio Brown is a needed pickup for Bradshaw owners. But he might even be a viable pickup even if you don't own Bradshaw. He came in the game last week when Bradshaw left, had a dominant performance. And, let's face it, Bradshaw misses Sunday football like a devout Christian does. I mean, it's just not, he's not going to be at some games because he's going to be hurt. Not in church. It was an analogy. Anyways, I do like Antonio Brown. Now, Daryl Richardson is somebody that you might pick up, not to necessarily start right away, but to have on your bench, because it seems that he is the #1 backup to running back Steven Jackson, who's having a bit of a weird relationship with coach Jeff Fisher and is sort of dealing with a little bit of injuries. And, Steven Jackson just has a lot of mileage on the engine, and I think that Daryl Richardson could be somebody who could be quite fantasy relevant come mid to late season. If I was from the future and I came on this web series to tell you the winning lotto ticket numbers, you would be so gracious and you would just thank me for the rest of your lives. And you'd be like, oh, Yoshi, look at this amazing life that I'm living and it's all because I won the lottery and we bow down to you in greatness. Okay? I don't exactly have that information, but I do have one name that's very important to put in that little noggin of yours. Danny Amendola. If he is out there on the waiver wire, pick him up. Don't even ask any questions. Just do it. He's a stud. He's one of the best wide receivers in the league right now. And I would even consider trading for him for a flex position play. I think he's the #1 target for Sam Bradford, who's looking like he's having a better year. And Amendola is showing those flashes of genius that he had in 2010 before his season-ending injury last year. I think this guy's going to be a top 20 wide receiver from here on out. So you're welcome. That's just knowledge. Thank you to all of you who sent in emails and Facebook messages. It's great to have that content coming in for the show. The question of the week that I'm going to read is from Brendan Burke from Piedmont, California. And Brendan writes in, Dear Yoshi, love the show. Naturally. Is Alex Smith a top 12 fantasy quarterback from here on out given his strong start to the year? Well, Brendan, I love the San Francisco 49ers, and I really, really like Alex Smith. I think he's one of the top 10 best quarterbacks in the NFL. But in fantasy football, I don't see that happening. I think he works really well in his system, and that's a system that relies on special teams, defense, a running game, and kicking to really get themselves their victories. He's smart and he's talented, but I don't see him airing out the ball and scoring touchdowns the same way that Eli Manning and Ben Roethlisberger and Michael Vick and guys that are in that little tier above him. So thanks for writing into the show. I would definitely consider him as somebody that you'd have on your bench to start during bye weeks, but as a top 12 fantasy quarterback, the answer is no. Well, it looks like we're all out of time for Week 2 segment of Fantasy Football Corner. I was your host, Yoshi De La Cruz. And like Abraham Lincoln once said, a man can spend his time doing many great things. Fantasy football is just better than those things.